Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome. This is day one of the Bangalore Literature Festival. We're getting started with our next session, and our next session is called Bhasha Bonding. It's a discussion with writers on the state of regional language, literature and translations. We have an esteemed panel with us. Thank you all for joining us in person. We really appreciate it. We have Krishna Manavalli, a well-known translator, Saniya, a Marathi writer, Vasudhendra, a rock star Kannada writer and publisher, in conversation with Mamta Sagar, a poet, writer, academic, and translator. Quick announcement before we get started with the discussion. If you have questions, we will be moderating the Q&A section, so please drop your questions there. If someone in the audience has a question, feel free to come over. We will, you can take this mic and pose your question to the panel. And with that, over to you, Mamta.
Elrigu namaskara. We welcome you to our session today. I'm really honored to be with amazing writers, translators, publishers, everybody from Bangalore. So to begin with, I would like Vasudhendra, the rock star. Yeah, he's been rocking so much, there is not even one hair on his head. But his writings are amazing. So much of strength for Kannada, for the community. And Vasudhendra, I would like you to share your experience of being a writer and then a publisher. Yeah. In this particular time, a decade of Kannada experience, yeah. What difference did you make? What difference did the time make to your writing?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Namaskara ellarku. Let us since this being a Bangalore Literature Festival, first let us understand how does this English translation, means all the Indian languages, which let us not call as regional language, we'll call it as Indian languages, whether it's Kannada or Marathi or Telugu, Tamil, Hindi, whatever it's Indian languages, why they need to be translated to the English. Okay, so there's a lot of discussion is going on about that specific translation. Now even English publishers are showing interest in publishing the regional works. So for me, based on my first book which got translated in English, Mohan Swami by Harper Hills, what I feel is, it's like this. I'll use a metaphor and I'll explain what exactly I mean. You have something like Navarasas in Kannada, in Sanskrit or in all the Indian this thing. We use the word Navarasa. This Navarasa is actually Astarasa only 8 rasas are there, 8 feelings, and one which is Shantarasa, they consider it as a platform or a base. The concept is like this: if at all you want to move from one rasa to another rasa, that means let us say you are in a Hasya rasa and you want to move on to Shrungara rasa, you can't directly go from Hasya rasa to Shrungara rasa, it doesn't allow you. So you have to come back to Shanta rasa and then move to any other rasa. Okay, so that is the basis in which these Navarasas work. So 8 rasas are there and there is a platform, basement. So you come to the Shanta rasa, go to the next rasa. You come to Shanta rasa and go to the next rasa, whichever you want to enjoy. That's the principle. Like it has become like that for me with English. So English translation is acting like a Shantarasa, so base. Once your work has come to the English, then only the other Indian languages are showing interest. So they are taking your works and they are trying. After it came in English only, it came in Telugu, it came in Tamil, Malayalam and Marathi and all my book. So when I had directly approached from Kannada to Telugu or Kannada to Malayalam to publish my book, there was no interest, absolutely no interest. Only it got published in English, then they are showing interest. So for me, like this English translation is like a Shantarasa, a base platform, and you have to come to there to move to any other language, any other Indian language is what I consider why there is a need for the English translation.
Vasu, I would also want to ask you, who made this platform? You are a publisher.
Time.
As a publisher, I'm asking you this question.
Yeah, it's a time, I think. So I always question, why does one language get more importance at any particular point of time? I don't have the answer. I think society decides most of the time. So if I studied recently the Vijayanagara period. Okay, so I wrote a novel based on the late 15th century and early 16th century of Vijayanagara period. How come like everyone wants to write in Telugu, including Krishna Devaraya? Staying in Hospete, which is hardcore Karnataka place, and everyone wants to write it in Telugu, including the Tamil people want to write in Telugu. So that time, the base language was Telugu. So his mother tongue was Kannada, Krishna Devaraya, but he wrote it in Telugu.
Telugu Shantarasa.
Shantarasa was Telugu at that time. So it can change at time to time. Once it was Sanskrit, once it was Telugu, once it was, it is now English, and who knows in future what it's going to be. So I don't know. But there is a need to reach all the audience. So what I always experience is like the students are not learning so much in their mother tongue, whether it is Kannada or whether it is Telugu, whether it is Tamil, it's the same scenario always. Most of the kids are going to the convents and they're not in a position to read our books. We have a great challenge. One challenge is try to make them read, somehow teach them Kannada, teach them Telugu and make them read your book. That's one challenge, I agree. But that's not easy. Now people are finding it very difficult. They're struggling and they're not able to do. But how do I reach them? My own Kannada stories, how do I reach them? So how to make the youngsters to read? One is, the easiest way is audiobooks, because they all understand Kannada. They all can, their mother tongue is Kannada, so they can understand. So that is one way. The other way is they know how to read English books, at least translate and pass our culture, whatever it is, in some form. Okay, for that I feel there is a need for it actually. So these two, but there is a limitations on the translations. Of course, I always give this metaphor is many of you might remember in my childhood days, this brew instant coffee used to give an advertisement. Okay, so the advertisement is ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ ಕಾಫಿಗೆ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಸನಿಹ ರುಚಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡುತ್ತದೆ. So that means this instant coffee gives a taste which is almost same as filter coffee. Okay, so they never had the courage to say that it is as good as filter coffee or better than the filter coffee, right? Translation is same. Okay, so whatever you do, it can go almost to the taste of the original, the filter coffee, but not the actual filter coffee you can give. Okay, that too in case of prose. In case of poetry, the coffee may become tea as well. So I don't believe in poetry.
I actually disagree with you.
Translation. So that's fine.
Okay, also, I disagree with you. Poetry makes coffee into coffee, tea, and many more things.
Yeah, possible. I'm talking about the quality of the translation to the original. This thing is very difficult, very challenging. The poetry.
Okay,
tough.
with this coffee metaphor, I would like to pose the question to Krishna Manavalli.
Sure, please.
Who makes coffee? Okay,
Right.
who is a wonderful translator. She's been translating Chandrasekhar Kambar and many more. I would like Krishna to please reflect your work, translation, and the time and your engagement with it as an answer to brew versus filter.
Brew, coffee, tea, what have you? Okay. Good afternoon, namaskara. And we begin with that. As a translator, what do I see this whole process of translation as? To start with, I am always very, very, hesitant to look at translation as something related to a logbook. So, lost in translation, profit, loss, these are the paradigms which make me feel a little, apprehensive about this whole process. No, for me, translation is transcreation. It is almost like, you are moored in the original work and in the culture and from which you're translating, but then you also have a commitment to the target language. So there, the seamlessness, this fluidity of moving something in it's not just the content material that we are talking about. It's not just the Lexus, as a lot of translators, keep obsessing about. Oh, this word, how do I translate it? This is so culture specific. How am I going to bring it into another language? So these are questions which are so based on some of the choices that you make as a translator. You make your linguistic choices, you make your aesthetic choices as a writer. And I think a translator also does that. Translation is always an interpretation, and it's always something based on a particular perspective. So when you look at translation that way, the one paradigm that I can think of is music, because I am also like deeply connected with Hindustani music, and my guru, Pandit Rajiv Taranatji, was not only somebody who honed my musical skills, but he also sort of shaped my literary sensibility to a large extent. And I think to date, his translation of Kambar's Jyokumara Swami is my model always, because I see that sort of seamlessness, that sort of fluidity of moving among languages. And he also is someone who grew up among languages, and that is something which I can say about myself too, because my home language is Telugu, and I am somebody who has worked with both English and Kannada. So I kind of move from language to language, and I can see that it is not just something where you are translating it like in terms of lexis, in terms of these culture specificity that is intranslatable. I'm not an ethnographer, I'm a translator, and I'm doing something very creative there. So what do I do with culture specificity is another choice that I have to make. Okay, so that is a problem I have when they say something is lost in translation. Probably a lot more is gained in translation
Exactly.
too.
Yeah. Yes,
Right?
I agree with you. Mm-hmm. So with the gaining of translation, we'll get back to translation again. Now I would like to move to Saniya, who is a Marathi writer who is been translated into many languages, including Kannada. And you will look for Saniya online. There's a lot of things. Now I would want Saniya. Now she is a writer writing in Marathi who's been translated by many languages. So she is not a translator as such. Now I would want Saniya, you to share with our audience about the core of your, why do you write, and what are the pressures that make you write? What are the pleasures that make you write? In
Thank
this
you.
time.
Yes, thank you, Mamta, and good afternoon to everyone. I think first of all, when we are talking about bonding, Bhasha bonding, I would just say that, my relationship with my language, because I was born in Maharashtra, educated in Maharashtra, and not just educated, I was educated in Marathi medium. That's how I am connected with Marathi language. And automatically, when I started writing very early, while in school itself, how did I start writing? Because I was reading Marathi poetry, I was reading Marathi stories, I was reading a lot of Marathi books. So naturally, perhaps something stirred in me.
When was this? Was this in the 70s or?
No, much earlier. I was about 10 years old.
No,
That's
give
in
me the
60s.
time. 60s. Then
yes.
I think this Black Panther movement was also very
yeah,
active.
It was a little later than that. Yes. But I was in school. When I started writing, I was in school. So whatever I was reading, I think it must have impacted me. And as I said, that since Marathi was my language, I like to express in Marathi, and which I continued. It so happened that by young age, by my 25s or so, I was out of Maharashtra. So since then, last several years, 30, 40 years, I have lived out of Maharashtra. I've never lived in Maharashtra. And still I continue writing in Marathi.
Okay, and now I would want to ask, well, you were born, brought up in Marathi, you moved out of Marathi linguistic space, but the
Yes.
geographical space, but you stayed on with Marathi.
Yes, right.
And you have been traveling as well, and you are a woman,
Yes.
and you have been writing.
Yes.
And what are the elements or what are the questions that bothered you, and or what do you want to propose in your writing? Can you just introduce a little bit?
Yes. Basically, I write about human relationships. My mostly writing is women centric. So I was always looking around and seeing the struggle of women. It so happened that in 70s, women's movement, feminism was very strong everywhere, and especially in Maharashtra, and especially in Pune, where I was in college. So I think that effect of social reforms in Maharashtra, that definitely has benefited me. It has given me a lot to think about. So when I was looking around and I was seeing the struggle, I was seeing the struggle of expression. In general, the why a woman is looking at her relationship, a life itself, trying to figure out the meaning of freedom, independence, self-esteem. All these things I found very important. So I have been writing about that mostly.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Yes.
This gives me a cue to say that it's not just the work of art, it's not just anything, it's the time that chooses what it needs. So I would like to briefly introduce about my translation of Elif Shafak's 40 Roots of Love, that I translated recently, 2 years back. And I thought, I'm a poetry person and the prose is like a poetry, that's a different thing. But I had to write a introduction to it. Why I translate that. I really wanted to translate that into Kannada at this point of time, where it talks about Rumi and Shame Tabriz's love for each other, fondness for each other, about Sufism, about politics. And that politics, that connection between two men, that philosophy, and the world around that is so, so important at our times, and it also speaks of Islam and various things. So when there is this kind of turmoil in the country, I wanted to speak about through Sufism, through this text. So now with this, I would like to propose you a question, Vasu. I chose to translate Elif Shafak's 40 Roots of Love because I wanted to answer this time that is going on around me. Okay? So when you have been writing, but Vasudhendra becomes the rock star at a particular time. So when there is this LGBT community and people started accepting the LGBT community, talks around that, how did that influence on you and how did the community accept? I mean, we know that you have been a wonderful writer and you are accepted. Can you please connect a little bit about the time and how you wrote about it?
See, it's connected with Mohana Swami. So I wrote an anthology called Mohana Swami. So it's about gay man's life. So it's stories surrounding around Mohana Swami, semi-autobiographical, which I wrote. So I should say the reason for writing this book is not the external pressure. It is actually internal. Okay. So I was a closeted gay, so for so many years, I didn't mingle with the community also. I have suffered alone and it cannot continue for long. So what happened is at the end, so it's like thus, like because I suffered so much, like it went to such an extent that I was in depression for so many years actually. So depression, so I could not sleep, I could not read, no activities, no energy at all. So I became like that. During that time, the trauma was so high, I said, I need to find out a way to express myself, otherwise this is going to haunt me. So that's the time I started writing Mohan Swami stories. It's a gay stories. Like I didn't want to publish them also. I was not even interested in publishing them also in the beginning. But I said, no, let me write. Let me write whatever is there inside. Let me start writing. Once I started writing the stories, my depression started coming down. So I was able to sleep well. I was able to behave well. So that is the result. Like, though it looks like an internal pressure, but it's an external word which has created that internal pressure. Because we have made a subject so taboo, a person or a community is suffering. Okay, so I wrote it and published without realizing what's the impact it's going to be. But believe me, writing in regional language has got more power than writing in English in India. When you write in regional language, it reaches to corners where English can never enter. Okay, so my book, because I wrote it in Kannada, English, you have enough literature on the gay life. You have enough information about the gay problem, but not in Kannada. So once I wrote it in Kannada, like I started getting calls from, you tell me in any district, any village, like people started calling me. I have the same story. Okay, so that is where, though I said English is Shantarasa, but you can't enjoy it for long. You have to come to the actual rasa,
Which is
rasa, which is
Arasa.
yeah.
The king.
So you have to come to the regional languages really to see the power of the writing. So that's where I said, so many 80 years person who called me from Mysore, he told me that if you had written this book 60 years back, I would not have suffered so much in my life.
Wow.
Okay, so I always said, like, there are books which gets you money, there are books which gets you name and fame and all is fine, but something which gives you back your life, it gives you an assurance that okay, there are people like you and they are living like you and you are helping them. So that is a great feeling. That's what I achieved through this marvelous family.
Now, Krishna, I would exactly want to pose turn this question around and ask you. Vasu said, when you write in regional language, it reaches to nooks and corners of smallest of the smaller places. And as you say, I definitely agree that translation doesn't lose anything, but it gains. So with both these things, you have been translating Kambar. Okay? So Kambar's works are so rooted in these nooks and corners of Kannada richness. So when you bring it into the English, you will be probably introducing that platform, Shantarasa, and you will disturb complete Shanta of that. Would you like to share that?
Sure. I mean, there's also a theory that Shanta is not a rasa at all. It's the absence of rasa.
Yes.
Absence of rasa.
Let me start with talking about myself a little bit. I don't always do that, but then I think it's pertinent here. My engagement with translation has to do so much with my multiple cultural locations. It started long ago, like I said, I grew up in vibrant cosmopolitan Bangalore, and I lived among languages, and there was always this urge to speak in all those languages, different languages, and to see the kind of dialogue and conversation happening between those languages. Later, when I went to the US, I studied there, and then I was also teaching there. And one of the things which we did there was teach this very, very fancy thing called global literatures. And we also did stuff, of course, I was also in the business of the so-called post-colonial literatures. And what happens again and again there is you see how there is a homogenization. In one swell swoop, it's like a fell swoop, you kind of gather all these different cultures, geocultural, the cultural material, and then the text into this one umbrella term called global. And then you start thinking, okay, somewhere there is also a slot for quote unquote Indian literature. And the Indian literature very often is Indian writing in English. What happens with all these rich literatures in Indian languages? That is something which I was always worried about, because more often than not, this idea of Indian literatures, especially Indian literatures as this kind of like a singular and uniform umbrella concept is defined outside of India. So I wanted to make this intervention. I wanted to look for writings in these different regional languages, so-called regional languages, because calling them regional languages can also be problematic, right? Yeah. So let me say Indian languages again. And then I wanted to see how all these plural and multiple cultures, languages, literatures make my concept of what is Indian. And that is when I wanted to engage with translation so much. And I was, of course, doing a little bit of that. And when I came back here for good, after 15 years, I met with Kambar again. And I wanted to resume where I had left off here. And Kambar's writing, he's perhaps the finest myth maker of our country and of our times. And the stalwart writer whose work, as you rightly pointed out, is rooted in this folk culture, is something which is very, very important for me, because as Kambar himself is very fond of saying, well, my Shivapura, the microcosmic little village that he creates in his writing, mirrors the whole world for me. Look at his whole oeuvre of writing. You see this kind of rootedness in the North Karnataka folk ethos, but at the same time, he responds to the contemporary turmoil, the political turmoil, and then the social, cultural problems of our times very, very crucially and sensitively in his writing. Look at Shivana Dangura, for instance, or even Shikhara Surya. He's talking about how market economy, our neo-colonial times that we are living in, how this kind of neo-colonial forces seep into the small places of the world. I'm almost reminded of Jamaica Kincaid, who talked about the small place. That is what I see happening there. And look at the very recent translation of mine from Peng, when I translated his earliest play, Rishishringa. There are those modernist undertones there, colonialism, and the kind of fractured selves and identities that the colonial history, as well as the modernist influence, played on Indian writing, Kannada writing a lot, and you see those things being translated into the folk ethos there.
Krishna, I'm really curious to know what were the challenges for you to uh, transform Shivapura into English?
There are always, as I said, the whole problem with culture specificity is you make different choices. And another thing that I really, really am very invested in is I started with talking about the relationship between music and translation. I see it's almost, for me, the paradigm is that of music, like a raga, for instance. You have to soak into the tradition. You have to soak into the corpus of writing, the whole oeuvre of a writer for a long time before you get the linguistic idiom, the aesthetic, structure, and also the ongoing preoccupations of that writer. It's like it's over a lifetime that you learn a raga. And after a while, you start rendering it. Maybe you render it, when you render it, you make it your own. Like a translator makes the original text his own or her own to an extent. But at the same time, you're doing it correctly because people have to identify that it is that raga indeed. And you're also doing it creatively because you're the one who's playing or singing that raga. For me, this is a paradigm, and metaphors say a lot more than, definitions can. So for me, translation is this activity where you can do something, over time you have to soak into the writings of that writer, and then probably you get the rhythm, you get the kind of ethos which are central, which are at the heart of that writer's work. And we were talking about it just a while ago. In fact, I was talking about this with Vasudhendra, and we agreed that you've got to read a lot of that writer before you really start doing something.
And now coming to you, Saniya, I would like to, you have been in Bangalore since pretty long.
Yes, quite
right?
curious. Yes.
So how does being in Bangalore, the flares, Bangalore is a cosmopolitan space. I'm not asking you how does Kannada reflect on it, because Bangalore is a multilingual space within Kannada. So has it made any difference to your writing? If it has, how?
Not just Bangalore, actually. I have lived many places, many parts of India. And what I always say is, though I write in Marathi, I don't necessarily write only about Marathi people.
Yes, that's
And
what
in
I
fact,
wanted you to speak
yes,
about.
Absolutely. And in fact, I am always, always refrain to give myself from giving too many personal details, because I don't mean to say that this particular woman belongs to a particular village or a particular city in Maharashtra alone. She could be from anywhere, because I want to actually address many more issues. She is necessarily urban woman or semi-urban woman, but she could be from anywhere. So that's why that is my whole idea about writing. So when I'm sitting in either in Bangalore, or I was sitting in Bhubaneswar, or I was sitting somewhere else, I write in Marathi, and in general, these are the people in my space of writing.
Okay.
So I don't find any problem there at all. And
Yeah,
every city, of course, I go on observing. So I'm actually more than the differences, I'm actually focusing on the similarities. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not only just here, even when I've lived abroad, I always found, yeah, there are a lot of differences which are outward, which are quite nice and enjoyable. But when you go to the core of the human being, human mind, and you know what a human mind yearns for, what he wishes for, what one wants, they are so similar. And I find that amazing. And I try to catch that.
Because you have exactly said that it's impossible to stereotype anything in this world, especially when it comes to women.
Absolutely.
All women don't look alike, all men don't look alike, all people don't look alike. So I think it's important to celebrate diversity.
Absolutely.
So with this celebration of diversity, I would like to also share, I have been translating poems from all over the world into Kannada, and well, publishers are difficult to get. Okay, Vasudhendra. And
You are an international writer, so you get published internationally.
so actually, it's very difficult to publish
opening up
poetry.
now.
It's difficult to publish poem.
Yeah, I agree, but then they're opening up now. There's a lot more happening.
No, what I'm trying to say is, so the kind of things that I choose to publish is something which I need to my time and my language and my space. So maybe a Slovenian writer is writing about his gay relationship, or some Cuban writer is writing about war. Somewhere else, somebody is writing about, Vietnamese writer is writing about something else. And so all these are the things which are very contemporary and which will give us voice to speak in Kannada. So translation is not just bringing something into a language, it also allows you to politically use as a tool. It's a very powerful tool which can help us speak what we want at the given point of time. So now I would ask each one of you, all three of you, to take half a minute if you have to say anything to our audience, and maybe after that we open it for Q&A.
Okay. Just one thing about
1 minute.
Just 1 minute only. So
Not half.
okay. So this translation is very important in reducing the fanatism.
Yes.
So most of the fanatism happens because you lack the knowledge of the other side. So once we have a translation which is very easy across all the languages, I think our unnecessary egos as a superiority complex will come down automatically. Now I feel so happy when people, even Kannada people, are watching Malayalam films, Tamil films, English films, everything they are watching, because with using the subtitles very soon will be in Kannada also, most probably. Technology is advancing, so it brings down the fanatism. We'll understand what is there on the other side and how good it is, how can we compare. So lack of knowledge will not be there. And also the modern tools, the technology, especially artificial intelligence, I'm believing a lot on the artificial intelligence, AI. Down the line, we might have a situation where at least 80% of the contents can be translated using the artificial intelligence only. It may not give you an artwork, from artwork to artwork, it may not give you, but it might introduce what is happening in the other languages. We don't have to wait till a publisher comes and publishes that book. Okay, so this kind of once transparency is maintained using the technology, so then we will live in a different world altogether. Whether you write in English, whether you write in Kannada, whether you write in some European language, it is immaterial. All can be read by everyone. So once we reach that situation, I think that's the ideal one.
Thank you.
By nature, translation is something which represents plurality for me. Plural languages, plural cultures, plural texts, plural writers, and plural perspectives. And after all, when you are translating something, you are very, very clear about the kind of stances, the kind of location from which you translate. It's not as if that, you can talk about this God's eye view in talking about translations or literature. After all, you do come from a particular location. You have your political ideas, you have your sociological and cultural beliefs, and you write some of it into your translations too. And then even when you translate, what you choose to translate, how you translate, all these have to do with the politics of translation, for instance. So as Mamta was talking about now, what you translate now is also something what you want to make contemporary. And it's your way of responding to your contemporary context. After all, text and context are bound to each other and they shape each other too. So when you translate, after all, you're producing a text, whether it's a palimpsest or whether it is something which is also outward looking, which is also trying to absorb the ferment of the times and the ferment of the socio-cultural and the geocultural location from which you are functioning. That I think is at the base of all translations. So when you translate, you do translate for your times, and when you choose something to translate, you choose that because it speaks to your times. That is how I see that.
Thanks a lot. Saniya.
Yeah, speaking of translations, though I know that my stories have gone into variety of languages, but I could just check as such only Hindi and English. And I really got good translators there. So other languages, actually, I don't know how exactly they are translated because I don't read those languages. But still, I feel translation is a very challenging job. So I'm quite thankful to my translators. And when the translator gets that inner voice of a writer, I really feel happy because I know that it will not, my story will not exactly go as I write in Marathi. But at least when my inner voice is caught and the translator is putting it into another language, I'm really happy. So I think translation is a great job. Translator necessarily needs to be a creative person, herself or himself. So I think many more translations need to be there, and I myself would like to reach out.
Lovely. So translation in Marathi were translated into Kannada. It speaks in Kannada. It speaks of Kannada. It speaks to Kannada.
Right.
Similarly, translation is an independent text. It need not replicate what. There is no original and something. It's a text and another text. Yet more text when you perform it. And as Vasudhendra said, translation is a very, very important element to deal with the fanaticism. As he said, you open the window, it reflects, the light reflects on you, so that we get the light when we reach the window, open it through translations. And as Krishna said, translation is a very important element that has to happen. It is simultaneously very personal and also cultural and along with the communities. And as a moderator and as a translator of poetry in particular, I would like to translate many more poems, and through translation, I think I at least have managed to introduce hundreds of poets into Kannada, and I wish I get more time in life to do more translations and write a lot and get translated into every damn language. Thank you. And we open it for Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. If someone in the audience has a question, please come over here and you can use this mic to pose the question to our panel. There are a couple of questions that have come in on Zoom and I'm going to read them out. The first question is by Sindhu Vasudev, and this is a question for Krishna Manavalli. There is a need for an inclusive platform to bring together those who are skilled and interested in giving their time for translation of regional language works. If you could talk about it and discuss how to achieve this goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a very, very important issue that we have to deal with. I was reading this somewhere. In the UK, there is apparently a translators union and then a kind of interface, a kind of a space where translators can get together and find that kind of mutual support. And then this support extends anywhere from editing the works to, like helping them with the legal issues. So that's like a range of things, including financial help. This is what I heard. But of course, I don't think we have anything like that here. We can at least form a network, we can at least form a support system, and we can also form a space where we have interaction, where we have conversations. And this is one platform. I'm glad that we are doing this now today, and we need to have more of those. And another thing, as a member of the English Advisory Board of the Sahitya Academy, Delhi, I know of the kind of work that we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of work in terms of translating Indian writing and into English and also into other Indian languages. Of course, these are all things which will contribute to extending and expanding this whole, field area realm of translations. We need a lot more, though, of course. The academia too, but then there is a problem. So sometimes a lot happens in the academia too, and most of us who are translators are also academics.
Yeah.
So there is a support system there, yes. I guess we have to gather all these support systems and networks together and see where we can go. That is something I'm thinking of at this point of time. Maybe there could be more suggestions. There could be more, thoughts on this.
Sure. Yeah.
From the others too.
If anybody
Because
has
I'm
any
really
thoughts.
interested in what we could do.
Yeah, actually, already there are a few translation units around the world. For example, I've been part of Literature Across Frontiers from Wales, and Melding Voices from England, and poets translating poets from Germany. So this is a kind of a collaboration, exchange, and voices from different countries and languages are put together, and there's an exchange program. Maybe we need to develop similar things in India. And through Kavya Sanjay, I have already started bringing out translations to the public space and bringing people through translation or readings into the public space. I think we need to develop something where we can exchange or activate this possibility of translation.
And a very heartening thing is that publishers are coming forward to publishing more and more translations. And then I can see a shift in the manner in which translations are being reviewed today. It's not like, okay, you talk a lot about the original work, and then as an afterthought, the last line is so-and-so translated, so-and-so work. I don't think that's happening. And I'm lucky to have had wonderful reviews of all my books, reviewers who engage with the translation and then talk a lot about the translation part too. So I guess something good is happening. And if there is more good to happen, wonderful. We would welcome that.
Great. We'll just take one other question. This is for all panelists. Is there a word in Indian language which was impossible to accurately translate into English, the essence of which was difficult to find an English equivalent for?
That is there everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether you can bring it from English to Kannada or Kannada to English or any language to any language, you always have challenges to build a new word.
Sure.
That reason being the need for that word in that particular language. For example, when I translated this into thin air, so I translated to Kannada. So into thin air, John Crocker's book, I translated to Kannada. This thin air is not there in Kannada. So we don't have any word for thin air. So I can just make one new word called Telugali. But it's not really thin air. So why we don't have that word? Because thin air exists only on a mountain after 4,000 meters actually. We don't have any mountain which is 4,000 meters in Karnataka. So why do we require that word at all? So language doesn't have that word. And similarly, I talk about my translator who translated my book to English. He said, I don't know how to translate Angel Gome. Angel Gome means like we clean it up after eating on the floor and clean it up. So it's in English became very difficult for me. I had to write one big sentence for that explaining what it is. And it is natural. And that's how new words have to be developed. So now, because when we talk about the globalization, the main thing is you have to develop more words to meet.
Actually,
the other
when I
necessities.
translated Elif Shafak's 40 Rules of Love, this word email keeps coming. I was wondering, we can call it email in Kannada. I just played with it and called it as Minchanche. Anche, which goes in like Minchu. Minchanche is, I love doing that, So sometimes, the sound of the language and the visual of what the act, it gives you a pleasure doing that.
Right.
Saniya, what do you think?
Yeah. I would also feel the same thing. Many times translators do get, they get stuck up, say, feeling that there is no one word for in another language, but that's quite natural. It depends on that.
No, as a Marathi writer,
yes,
and a modern urban context writer,
Right.
did you have to think of any word in Marathi to bring into Marathi into your work?
Not this. I don't remember like that because I was very fluently. I write in Marathi. When I write in Marathi, I think in Marathi, and I just bring that into language.
It's very correct. What I would prefer is we need to have some kind of an academy or some responsible committee which will start creating new words, and it encourages people, journalists and all to use those words or suggest a new alternative word. Then your vocabulary will improve. If you don't have that method, like it will be challenging to do the translation. This new word for gay in Kannada. If you want the exact meaningful word in gay, we don't have. So we coined something. I got Salinga, Prema, Salinga, so many things which we are trying to coin it using Sanskrit words, but you don't have an exact word for the gay because the culture has always made the gay issue as a taboo. So they never wanted to talk about it. When you don't talk, then there won't be any words.
Maybe, the gay should come as gay.
Yeah, that's one. I use that one. We are finally gay only.
That is good because, the whole politics of LGBT and the words that were used during that, it is neither English nor Hindi. Gay belongs to every language.
Yeah.
Okay, like basu, karu,
Gate.
gate, and gate too.
That's
with
great.
this,
Yeah, great. I think someone in the audience has one question. We'll probably take this question, and if there is time, we will take one other question. Yeah, please come over and keep it very brief because we're running out of time.
ಸೊ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್, ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಭರತ್ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಮೈ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಈಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ವಸುಧೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್. ಈಗ ಒಂದು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅದು ಭಾವನೆಗಳು ಎಷ್ಟು ಮುಖ್ಯ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಜಯಂತ್ ಕಾಯ್ಕಿಣಿಯವರ ಮುಂಬೈ ಕಥೆಗಳನ್ನ ಓದಿದೆ, ನೋ ಪ್ರೆಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಅಂತ. ಫಸ್ಟು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿ ನಂತರ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿದೆ. ಸೊ ನನಗೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಹತ್ರ ಆಯಿತು ಆ ಕಥೆಗಳು. ನಂತರ ಈಗ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ನಾನು ಮಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮದುಮಗಳು ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಮಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮದುಮಗಳು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮಲೆನಾಡು ಪ್ರದೇಶದವರೇ ಬರೆಯೋಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ, ಅದನ್ನ ಯಾರೋ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಬಂದು ಬರೆಯೋಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಆ ಅನುವಾದವನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ ಜನ ಅನ್ನೋದು. ಅಂಡ್ ಒನ್ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಸರ್. ಈಗ ನೀವು ತೇಜೋ ತುಂಗಭದ್ರ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟದ್ದು ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅದನ್ನೇ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾರೋ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಯಾರೋ ಬಂದು ಓದ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಭಾವನೆಗಳು ಹೇಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಆಳವಾಗಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ.
His question is, it's again, it comes to the filter coffee and instant coffee thing only actually. So how can you have the same feelings as what a Kannada person when he reads a Kannada book to be translated even in English, so that when someone reads the English book, he gets the similar feelings? The question here is, don't be very rigid that he should get the same experience as mine. Let him get a different kind of experience. Okay, it might depend, it all depends upon his background, what kind of background he has come, so where he comes from, what is his culture. It all depends, and still it works out to some extent. Okay, but translation is important. You don't have to challenge it. It has to be the same piece, exact piece has to be there. No need necessary, because when we translated many of this African literature, I am a publisher, so I have published a lot of these Africa's autobiographies I have published in Kannada, especially one from Tanzania. So we translated it in Kannada and published. Many Dalit youth told me it is exactly a Dalit autobiography. See, where is Tanzania? Where is the African this thing? But where is Kannada person, the Dalit person feeling that it is same as his story? So both backgrounds are different, but still they can feel that what you call rasa. So feelings, they have a similar one. So let us not be rigid that it has to be the same piece. It can be something else, but at least people get exposed, and that's enough. That you achieve quite a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I
When
got
a
that.
filter coffee is not available, let us have instant coffee. I don't mind at all.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. In the interest of time, we may not be able to take more questions. Apologize for that. So thank you. This was a very, very interesting session. So can we have a huge round of applause for all our panelists? Thank you very much.